So welcome to our last and final unit for our grade 10 urban art class. So this one's going to be a bit of a challenge, and I'm hoping that we can throw everything that we've learned all together and do something kind of cool. So I hope I've broken it down enough so you can do this and it's going to be awesome. So we are doing our street art portrait. So let's just have a look at just some examples to get you kind of pumped up. Okay, so let's have a look. In a second. I'm at home, but the internet's still a bit slow here. All right. So, all right. So let's look at our street art portraits here. Perfect. Okay. So in Toronto, and I want to focus a lot on the Toronto artists, so I want you to be able to recognize some of these people when we get to go to Graffiti Alley next year. Now, a few years ago, when Rob Ford was the mayor of Toronto, he made this initiative to get rid of all of graffiti in Toronto. So he was really upset by the graffiti thing, and he actually he made it his mission to sort of eradicate all graffiti in Toronto. So you can just imagine how the graffiti artists and the street artists sort of reacted to that. They were quite upset about it. So what happened? They ended up doing more graffiti sort of in spite of this, right? So one of the main artists that really campaigned against this his name was Spud, or it goes by Spud Bomb. And he's like a graffiti artist, street artist. So his thing, and you still see some of these stencils up around Graffiti Alley, not a whole lot, but you got to know where to look and what to look for. But he did this whole sort of campaign against Rob Ford, doing sort of his image and making comments and stuff and putting up everywhere. And his icon was this bomb called Spud Bomb, and he actually, so this is done with a stencil, and he had that placed up all over the place as well. So by Rob Ford sort of coming out and saying, no more graffiti in Toronto as a solution to try and stop the graffiti and the street art, it actually caused more to sort of happen. So, so a lot of even Spud's work, he actually incorporates sometimes in his letters and things like that, just images of Rob Ford. After Rob Ford came another approach, because obviously they weren't winning on stopping sort of the vandalism of graffiti and street art. So what they started to do, they changed their initiative, they changed their approach, and they started this program called START, which is Street Art Ontario, and they have done some incredible things. The way that START approached it is that instead of saying no more graffiti, no more street art, is that they started actually having this campaign where they would use street artists and graffiti artists. They would actually hire them and pay them to actually do these amazing murals and in these spaces. And so they looked at the city, and they were looking at where does some of this vandalism happen the most, and how can we actually take all this talent that we have in Toronto and showcase them, and even, oh my gosh, pay them to actually do some of their artwork. So things like underneath some of the bridges, and along some of the places where people were getting vandalism done. And they started sponsoring these initiatives. Also on this website, they have this street art directory. And what the coolest thing is, this artist directory. So as a graffiti artist or a street artist, I can get my name put on this directory, and I can have examples of my work and have a little bit of a bio about me. And what is so cool that I think this is quite brilliant. If I own a business downtown Toronto and I'm finding that my walls are getting vandalized all the time with tags and throw-ups, what I could do is actually I could hire an artist that is registered with the START program. I could pick an artist that I like, and I could actually hire them to paint something on the side of my building in my business. And I don't know if they still do it, but I know initially when they started this program, the city would actually put some money towards it. And then, so the owner of the building would have to pay a little bit, but also the city would pay some of it. So this was great for actually artists to be able to actually make money from their art. So even as an artist myself, as a graffiti artist, and if I was registered on START, I could actually walk around and like get my own jobs. I could say to these people, hey, listen, I noticed that, there's a lot of vandalism on your wall, and, here's an idea that I have, and this is what I do. This is how much it would cost you, and this is how much the city would pay for it. And it's probably end up being cheaper than having to get, the graffiti and the vandalism removed all the time. And just on a side note is that if you are a business owner, and there is vandalism on the side of your building, then you are responsible for removing it, and you have a certain amount of time to remove it. And if you don't, then the city will come along and remove it and send you the bill. So financially, this makes a lot of sense to a building owner. It prevents other people from vandalizing. I think what an amazing initiative this is. And now you walk around Toronto, and there's so much to see and look at. It's a tourist attraction as well. They also have these really cool programs as well. Again, I think that this is just brilliant. So you can actually apply to some of the programs. They have special events, and they have like calls, like special projects that they're doing, and be like, okay, you want to be a part of this? You're an artist, come apply for this. They have the directory that I was telling you about, and now they even have a map of all the different murals that are in Toronto as part that have been completed for the past couple of years. In Toronto. So like as a tourist, what a great way to walk around the city and get to know it and look at this map and see all these artists. So it's an amazing, amazing program. So some of the artists that are involved in this program, and one of them his name is Emmanuel Jarris, and he goes by the name Young Jarris. When we do go to Graffiti Alley, this is one of the main pieces in Graffiti Alley, and this was commissioned by the people that live here and own this building. And so Jarris is this artist here that does these realistic portraits using spray paint freehand, which is pretty cool. And I've actually seen some videos that he's done watching him spray paint them, and it's pretty wicked. And you might recognize this guy from our graffiti unit, and that's Scam. So these are Toronto-based artists. So around Toronto, Jarris has done these amazing portraits, again, freehand spray paint. And they're sort of, the way that the body's positioned and where they are is all, dependent on the space. They fit into these certain spaces. So there's even a whole website that you can look at just Jarris's work, and you can see like a map where all this stuff is. I mean, you could even do, a walking tour of just, or maybe I guess a driving tour, because Toronto's pretty big. Just some of Jarris's stuff. So Jarris is trained I think he went to OCAD, I'm not sure. He's trained as an artist, like as a fine artist, but he actually ended up using those, traditional art skills and taking it to spray paint and taking it on the streets. So Jarris works around all over the world. So he's doing really well. This one's another one that we see just at the end from coming out of Graffiti Alley. So this is another one that he's done. It's kind of cool. It glows in the dark as well at night. He's got like these black lights and stuff on it, so which is really cool. And I think this was done not too long ago. It's still up there. This is like a friend of his, and a lot of the stuff he's trying to tell these stories. They're not necessarily like famous people, but sort of telling stories about different people that live in the area and that have impacted him. And, just, I don't know everything about all the stuff that he does. There's so much to know. But just incredible in terms of having portraits of people on the streets, right, that everybody sees. And again, freehand spray paint, pretty cool. Let's look at another Toronto artist who's also, again, registered with the START program. And I picked her just because I really liked her stuff. And again, she sort of works with telling stories about people. What I like about Natasha Ditchpan's work is just they're not necessarily always realistic, right? I like the idea of the paint dripping off of it as well, and different images, perhaps a little bit of symbolism in it as well, but these sort of abstract nature of them, that the faces aren't always like skin color, right? There's all these different colors and stuff going on there, which is what's so cool about about spray paint. So a different approach from Jairus, but still like technically very, very cool, right? Here's another example of one of her pieces. She's also not only just a painter and a muralist, but I think she does a lot of illustrations and stuff, which you can really tell from this kind of thing. So I like the sort of combination of like the graffiti and the street art and the portraits. So I'm trying to inspire you with not only thinking about, portraits like realistic, like Jairus. Yes, we can totally appreciate like his stuff and that he's doing it with spray paint and really big on walls, but also like how much you can do with paint and color and, combining sort of the brightness of the graffiti, even sometimes a graffiti letter. See how this sort of ties into the typography portraits that we did a little bit, the colorfulness and the paint on the faces, right? The drips that the spray paint like lets you have, right? So these are not Toronto artists, but just other stuff that I thought was kind of cool, right? The splattering of the paint and the layers and the layers and the layers, just, that balance between like abstract sort of art, and what spray paint potentially could do, but then sort of like the realism like of the people. So this is what I want to sort of inspire you with. This is where I want to sort of go, and I don't want you to feel that we are doing painting realistic stuff like, the Mona Lisa or whatever. Okay, so I want you to think about this. I want you to think about people and their stories, because remember, graffiti is done to communicate to other graffiti writers. It's very promoting yourself. It's very egotistical, right? Whereas street art, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this, street art is a little bit more for the public, right? So that's why I think people sort of tend to feel safer with street art, because it's meant to communicate to the general public. So when you are thinking about a person that would potentially be a piece of street art and go up on a wall and everybody's going to see it, who is it and why are they there? What is their story? It could be a famous person. It could be a famous person from 100 years ago. It could be somebody's voice maybe who hasn't been heard yet, right? So maybe it's somebody that so maybe it's somebody that needs more of a voice. Maybe it's some sort of woman that has accomplished something pretty cool, but not everybody knows about it, and their story needs to be heard. I don't know. This is something that you need to think about. What's important to you? What kind of issues or things that you want, what kind of voice are you going to have through this person? Why do you need to bring this person to light and share their story, right? And something that you would enjoy doing. So when we start this unit, that's something that I want you to think about. So more than just necessarily a mentor, but who is this person representing, and what is their voice, and what kind of story are they going to tell, and what's going to be interesting about them? Okay, so that's where we're going with this project. So next, let's look a little bit more about the differences between street art and graffiti briefly, and then let's get into like how we're going to pull this off. Okay, all right, we'll see you in the next lesson.